You know what's stealing your peace. It's not the major crises or life-altering events. It's the small moments. A dismissive comment, a condescending tone, a seemingly insignificant slight. Someone says something and suddenly your entire mood shifts. They move on with their day. You don't. You replay the conversation, dissecting every word, feeling the irritation build. Hours later, you're frustrated with yourself for even caring this much. Here's the uncomfortable truth. This pattern keeps repeating itself for a specific reason. It's not because you're overly sensitive or weak. There's a psychological mechanism at work, a pattern that explains why certain people get under your skin and why your reactions feel automatic. Most self-help advice tells you to just calm down or practice patience. But that's not where the real solution lies. Once you understand the true starting point, reacting will stop feeling necessary. Let's explore why. There's something peculiar about emotional reactions. The moment you respond, whether through a sharp comment, a passive-aggressive text, or an angry confrontation, the other person is already free. They said what they needed to say. They've moved on. They might even feel satisfied that they got to you. Meanwhile, you're the one still carrying the weight. That's how you know anger itself isn't the core issue. Anger is a natural human emotion that typically passes quickly. What doesn't pass is what you choose to do with it. The cutting reply you drafted but didn't send. The message you rewrote 3 times before hitting delete. The scene you mentally replayed all night long. Here's the part most of us don't want to admit. The reaction never actually protects you. It just convinces you that it did. This is why the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, defined strength not as overpowering others, but as self-control in moments of anger. That precise moment when anger surfaces is when impulsivity becomes most dangerous, not because it makes you immoral, but because it makes you hasty. Just quick enough to act before thinking. Just fast enough to surrender control of the situation. And once you react, the damage is done, not to them, but to you. Your composure, your dignity, your position of strength. So the goal was never to eliminate anger entirely. The goal is to stop letting it speak for you. Have you noticed it's never everyone? 10 different people can make the same comment, and you barely register it. But when one specific person says it, it sticks. It replays in your mind. It irritates you. It lingers far longer than it should. That's not random. Anger doesn't react to words alone. It reacts to meaning. When someone touches on something you're already sensitive about, respect, effort, being taken seriously, fairness, your defenses immediately activate. This is where emotional manipulation does its quietest work. It doesn't create new feelings. It presses on existing ones. Suddenly, you're reminded of every time you felt overlooked, every instance you swallowed your pride, every moment you told yourself, "I'll let it go," but never really did. So when that person speaks, it's never just about this present moment. It's about an entire backlog of unresolved emotions you've never properly processed. The Quran describes Satan as one who whispers, not shouts. He connects moments. He layers meaning. He transforms a single sentence into what feels like a personal attack. If you don't recognize this pattern, you'll think the problem is the person. But the real danger isn't that they spoke. It's that your reaction is carrying far more history than you realize. Once you see this pattern clearly, you stop reacting to the moment and start dealing with what it's actually touching. That awareness alone weakens the grip of impulsivity. Think about the moments you regret most. They're rarely premeditated. They happen fast. A reply sent too quickly. A sentence delivered with the wrong tone. An explanation you didn't owe anyone. The strange thing is, the anger itself usually wasn't even that intense. It was the urgency, that overwhelming feeling of, I need to respond right now or I'll lose something. Respect, position, the upper hand, so you speak. And the moment you do, you don't feel relief. You feel exposed. This is why the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave such straightforward guidance. If one of you becomes angry, Let him remain silent. Not walk away forever, not suppress the feeling indefinitely. Just don't speak yet, because speech locks emotion into reality. Silence allows it to pass without causing damage. Most conflicts don't escalate because of what was said first. They escalate because of what was said next. Silence interrupts that chain reaction. In practical terms, this looks surprisingly ordinary. You don't reply immediately. You don't correct every misunderstanding. You don't explain yourself to someone who's already decided how they see you, not because you're afraid, but that kind of restraint doesn't make you invisible. It makes you unpredictable. And people don't toy with someone who doesn't react on command. Here's something we rarely acknowledge. Anger doesn't just feel bad. Sometimes it feels good. For a moment, you feel sharp, clear, justified. You finally feel in control of the situation. That's why the same people express anger repeatedly, not because they're unaware of the pattern, but because anger provides a temporary sense of power. Especially when you feel ignored, undervalued, or talked over, anger becomes the fastest route to feeling significant again. This is where Islamic teaching becomes remarkably precise. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, didn't warn about anger simply because it's an uncomfortable emotion. He warned about it because it lies. It promises strength, but delivers only impulse. It promises respect, but frequently costs dignity. That's why he said anger comes from Satan. Because Satan doesn't push you toward obvious weakness. He pushes you toward false strength, the kind that burns intensely but leaves you exposed afterward. Once you understand this, anger stops feeling heroic. It starts feeling predictable, and anything predictable can be controlled. There's something subtle that happens when you stop reacting, and most people don't notice it immediately. Your life gets quieter, not empty, quieter. Fewer unnecessary arguments, fewer explanations you didn't owe, fewer moments where you drive home replaying conversations in your head. And it's not because people suddenly became better. It's because you stopped feeding certain dynamics. Some people only maintain power as long as you react. They poke, they test, they provoke just enough to feel important. When that reaction disappears, something shifts. Not dramatically, but practically. They speak differently or less or not at all. Here's what matters. Islam never instructed us to win every exchange. It taught us to protect our inner state. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that a believer is not someone who curses, insults, or explodes, not because those behaviors are loud, but because they leak control. When you stop reacting, you don't become invisible. You become harder to manipulate. Your energy stops being public property. Your mood stops being negotiable. Your peace stops being something others can casually disturb. And slowly, without announcement, your life begins to organize itself around calm instead of chaos. Not because you demanded respect, but because you stopped giving access to your reactions. If there's one thing this message was never trying to teach you, it's how to live a life where nothing ever bothers you. Islam doesn't promise that. People will still speak out of turn. Disrespect will still exist. Unfairness won't disappear. What Islam actually offers is something deeper, a way to live where those things don't penetrate you. Because the real problem was never anger itself. It was how easily our inner state was being handed over to external circumstances. Every reaction gave something away: time, energy, dignity. Slowly, without noticing, we started living at the mercy of other people's words and moods. What the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught wasn't suppression, and it wasn't silence born from fear. It was mastery, the kind where you still feel emotions, but you decide when to act on them. The kind where anger shows up, but it doesn't get the keys to your behavior. Once that changes, something settles inside. Not because life gets softer, but because you stop leaking yourself everywhere. So if today you're practicing pausing more than reacting, choosing restraint over impulse, protecting your inner state instead of defending every moment, that's not weakness. That's growth taking shape quietly. If this message reached you at a moment you needed it, leave a simple, Ya Allah, steady my heart and my reactions in the comments. You never know who might say, Ameen with you. Until then, walk with restraint, respond with intention, and don't rush what calm is slowly building inside you. Peace, mercy, and blessings be upon you.